Now, welcome to another News from Naboo Weekend Ramble edition. And what is our topic this week?
Well, we're shaking things up a little this week, and instead of talking about an article, I'm going to pose you a question.
Very well.
Do you think Star Wars is still a film franchise, or are we looking to the shift now to things like Disney Plus and the streaming services, where they can use a longer time frame to tell a bigger story?
I mean, obviously, it started as a film franchise, and I think we will obviously get films going forward. I don't know that entertainment in general is geared toward film anymore. I mean,
Right.
no, I shouldn't say that. I mean, I think the problem is that everybody loves long, continued stories. They love intricate stories. They love interconnectivity in general. They like the shared universes. I think Marvel really just changed everything with the MCU, and then around the same time, you had something like Game of Thrones, which obviously has a complexity that no movie could ever hope to pull off, or even a series of movies could ever hope to pull off. I mean, it's 8 seasons long, and one of people's biggest gripes is you ended it too soon. There was still so much left to go and tell. So I think Star Wars is becoming kind of a TV or a series or Disney Plus franchise. I think it lends itself extremely. I think most stories lend themselves obviously extremely well to the long format.
I think fantasy and sci-fi, the long format works better. Action movies, that are like speed and I don't know. There are certain movies that I feel like definitely work much better as a film franchise.
Absolutely, yeah. Like Fast and Furious doesn't need to be a series.
But even talking about the MCU, and I won't spoil anything for anybody, just putting that out there. Spider-Man No Way Home, I think that was solid. That was great in movie format, and I don't think I would have wanted that any other way. But then turn around, and we just saw Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness. That would have benefited from a show because I have so many questions left over at the end that I needed more plot explained, I feel.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think what you said is you nailed it on the head. Like fantasy, sci-fi, anything that looks to really world build obviously benefits from the longer format, where you can take that time to basically have exposition or basically have entire episodes that are just kind of laying the groundwork for your world or your story. And I think one of the things the original trilogy and even the prequels does really well is it just kind of throws you in there, and it doesn't really explain anything to you. It lets you kind of either figure it out or just kind of assume or make guesses about the world. I mean, it just drops you right into the middle of a story. And that isn't to say, especially the prequels, I would say, do a tremendous job world building, even though it's not directly focused on the world building. It's just behind the scenes. It's always about the characters and this great backdrop, which is very well fleshed out, despite the fact that it isn't really focused on. I think that's one of the things the prequels do extremely well is world build without really focusing on world building. I know that sounds kind of contradictory, but I think it does that really well. And I think people really, I mean, your world is your everything, right? If you don't have an interesting world, yeah, you'll still get people who are interested in your characters, but it's not the same. I mean, part of the thing that I think worked with the original trilogy or the first Star Wars movie is you took kind of these everyday characters that you could easily relate to. We can all kind of relate to Luke and the Han Solo types and all this, and you put them in this fantastic setting. I think that's one of the keys to Star Wars. You took really relatable, normal characters and you put them in something amazing. Yet you didn't just try to explain your world. It was all about the characters.
I just feel like there needs to be a new method with filmmaking in a sense. If you are telling your story and you're sitting on the editing floor and your movie's already you're like, I need this to be 2 hours, 2.5 hours. As because once you start getting longer than that, people don't want to wait and sit in the theater. If you feel like you're struggling with that time frame, like you're sitting on the editing floor going, oh, but I have to leave this in, oh, I gotta cut this out. Maybe you really need to think about that being a series instead. A 2.5 hour movie is 5 30-minute episodes.
Yeah.
How could that extra half hour really add to your story? Do you need an extra hour? Let's, take it to Disney Plus and convert it. Think of if your story cannot be told and you're struggling at the editing floor, maybe this format did not work for you as the possible writer or director of this.
Yeah, I mean, I think that can be a bit of a double-edged sword. I mean, I agree with you because I think, a lot of the biggest problems with trying to make a movie, I would imagine, is runtime. Because you don't want a 4 hour, you can every now and then get away with a 3.5 hour movie, like a Lord of the Rings, Return of the King. Sometimes you can go long and people are going to, tolerate that. But you're always trying to hit that, 2 hour, 2 hour, 15-minute kind of runtime with a movie like Star Wars. and you just have to cut a lot out. I mean, when you make it a series, you can just make it as long or as short as you need it to be. Though the problem with that is kind of the flip side. I mean, sometimes you want to make a long series and you really don't have that much to put into it.
Then that deserves to be a movie.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not saying
it's like the writers and the directors need to get together with these companies beforehand when they're pitching and go, this needs to be a series because it's too long for a movie, or maybe this could be a movie because it's clearly you're reading it and you go, well, you can cut all this out and it's too short for a series.
I think that might be the way the MCU kind of looks at it. I mean,
I still think Multiverse of Madness should have been a series. There was a lot left to explore. Again, I'm not going to give anything away. I'm not spoiling this for you guys. But I feel like that movie needed more time.
Well, I think part of the problem is Star Wars for me is, it's always going to be a film franchise. Don't get me wrong here. I'm not arguing Star Wars should not make movies or that. It is a film franchise first and foremost and will always kind of remain that way in my mind. But I think the problem is, Solo was a good example. A Solo series where you don't try to condense every moment of Han Solo's life into a 2-hour film. I think a Solo series could work.
Definitely.
Because you could actually take the time instead of, everything important that happens to Han Solo happened in a 2-week time frame in this one movie. I think the big epic stories keep doing trilogies. I think Rogue One was really good.
Oh, very
good. Probably my favorite Disney movie of the Disney films. But I think the film should be reserved for these kind of epic grand stories, like the trilogies. I think they should continue to do trilogies. And all we're hearing about now is Rogue Squadron is apparently the next film coming up. And I love the books, I love the comics, the game. That's all great. It was great in the EU. Problem is, it was a really long story, right? There was a lot to it in the EU.
I mean, the problem. Sorry, go ahead.
No, and you're now going to condense it into a 2-hour film that's probably not even going to be all that inspired by that.
Well, I feel like Disney's problem with starting a new main trilogy is they said, for one, the Skywalker saga is over.
Then go 5,000 years in the future and make a whole new. That's what Disney should do and should have done. Honestly, away. Just get far away.
I think they're a little worried or afraid because of how hard they got bit by the sequel trilogy, because you have fans who diehard love it and you have fans who absolutely hate it.
That's because you used these legacy characters in a way that is controversial. There's no way around it. Even if you love it, you have to admit, okay. I mean,
but that could have ruined their future plans to possibly do a next sequel following Rey and rebuilding the Jedi again.
Which I think I think that was absolutely their idea. I think Star Wars definitely, or Disney definitely wanted to move past all of this and do kind of their own Star Wars. And I think they found themselves, they made a trilogy that, again, that you can love it, you can hate it. I really doesn't bother me either way how you feel about it. They made a trilogy that is extremely controversial, that some people really hate, some people out there really love it. And so you found yourself with this property that, well, what do we do with this? Because I do think, like I was saying, I do think the intent was to just carry on after that. Instead, now they find themselves in this kind of weird, scenario where they're really focusing on this post-Return of the Jedi time period, which leads to the sequel trilogy. So they've kind of backed themselves into this corner.
I think they need to just, and people may not like me for saying this, I think they need to be bold. I think they need to go forward with that story. Go ahead, do it, and make sure you do it right this time. If they went ahead with let's continue on the legacy of the Jedi through Rey, and they told a really great story, and they wrote the characters in it very well, would people accept it?
Some would not. I think there are some who will simply never accept Rey, never accept anything. But at that point, that's on them? Well, I mean, to be very blunt about it, I mean, if someone takes a poop on your front porch and you're unhappy about it, that's not...
But if they come back and ask for forgiveness and apologize?
Yeah, I know, but I mean, I know that's a crude thing, but I mean, sometimes it is the other person's fault, right? Sometimes there's no okay, I'm just going to accept that you pooped on my front porch or you pooped on my favorite franchise. So
but even you accepted the fact that Rey was liked, for the most part, in the first movie, hated in the second, and liked and redeemed, kind of brought back to what she should be in the third.
They tried to fix her in the third movie. Now, did that work?
Resetting her almost back to where she was in the Force.
Yeah, they tried to do a condensed story arc with her, where she kind of has these doubts, and then she's tempted by the dark side for 2 minutes, and then Luke talks to her. I mean, that's seriously the whole Luke. When she goes back to Ahch-To and talks to Luke and the Force goes, that really should have been what the really should have been what The Last Jedi was, right? We should have had this doubt in Rey where she's like, why am I going? Why am I doing all this? What am I doing with my life? Why am I going to help other people when I've spent my whole life worried about me? And so you kind of have this movie, the eighth movie or the middle movie of the trilogy, where she goes there and she learns from Luke what it's like to be a Jedi, why it matters that you can't be selfish. Instead, we try to condense that into like a 2-minute scene in The Rise of Skywalker.
I mean, that's the real shame of this whole thing. But like I said, I think at the end of the third movie, you were back to being at least okay with Rey again.
No, I actually kind of like her in the third movie. It doesn't mean that overall that I think the character is fantastic, but it's like they recognized the problem with her and they tried, and she isn't as... I mean, she does force healing and, she's all the Jedi. There are things that I don't like about it or that I think don't mesh well with the lore.
Absolutely.
But I think the character is much, much better in 9 than she is in 8. In 8, she's
Absolutely.
just... I'm going to save everybody because I am Rey. That is... that's what I feel like the character is in Episode 8.
But I still feel like either A, they need to just bite the bullet and go ahead with what their plan was and just make sure they write and feel out these characters much better this time. Or B, do what you said. Move it to the future, move it to the past, do something. We still need a film. This is started as a film franchise, and I'd like to see it go back to being a trilogy-based film franchise.
I would too. Don't get me wrong. I want to see trilogies. I don't necessarily want it to be a Disney Plus, franchise, but I do love what they've been doing on Disney Plus for the most part. I think they've been doing a pretty good job there. I think it's
good for following smaller scale stories that focus on a single or a small group of characters.
Yeah. I think like the High Republic, for example, is them kind of afraid to actually do something new with Star Wars, yet trying to pretend they're doing something new with Star Wars. I think the High Republic, they should have, like I said, I think the best thing Disney could do is and look, I know Old Republic, I love Old Republic. There's a lot of stories I would love to see brought to life in there. The Darth Bane trilogy, Plagueis. There's all kinds of stuff I would love to see them do with kind of the known time periods. However, I think their best bet would have just been, all right, we're just going to go like 5,000 years into the future, and we're going to do our own Star Wars. And if people like it, they like it. If they don't, guess what? It's not like we're destroying all this, lore that people have been following and appreciating for decades. And, and if it fails, then they can try something different.
Right. I mean, the series focus on small-scale problems, small-scale galaxy things,
Yeah.
The big stories belong on the screen. We need to know the galaxy situation at whole, and that's what the main trilogies, that's what they do.
Yeah. I mean, kind of like, not to say it should be like the MCU exactly, but kind of like the trilogies are the Avengers films. Like, they're the really, really big stories, and then the shows can be the smaller individual movies.
Absolutely.
Kind of that kind of mindset. Instead of doing like Rogue Squadron, am I excited to see it? Yeah, for the most part.
We'll have to see what kind of story they come up for this.
Yeah, and then there's the Taika Waititi, and we've got like other rumored movies or that have been announced that we've heard nothing about in years, and it's like, oh, okay, I guess they're just going to give this person a movie to do, and that's going to be interesting, I guess.
I guess.
Know. But no, like I said, they've kind of painted themselves into the corner with The Mandalorian, which has been really good. It's probably the most universally enjoyed thing Disney has done with Star Wars thus far. Not counting like a Clone Wars Season 7, which had a smaller audience and was already based off something
that everyone loved?
Yeah, that had existed before. So
yeah, not new.
Yeah, it's kind of cheating in a way to call that Disney, Star Wars. But no, Mandalorian has been great. And like I said, that's the problem, because now you have this dilemma of eventually you're going to lead into something that is very controversial. So what do you do with it? My vote would be you do a trilogy, like I said, years in the future.
Yeah, we could do that. They could, of course, make reference back to things we would have missed, such as if they do want to reference that Rey founded this new Jedi Academy, or even have descendants in it of the characters we knew from the sequel trilogies.
Yeah, you could do something like that. I don't even know that
Well, that way you could also have the Skywalker name carry on. Not the way anyone wanted it to, but in a way that is acceptable.
Yeah. All right, well, I guess that's all we've got for you this time for this weekend ramble. Now it's your turn. Take to the comments below. Tell us what you think the future of Star Wars should look like. Do you miss the movies? Do you think it should be trilogies? Do you like just having the more Star Wars stories type films? Do you think the focus really should just be on the Disney Plus shows? Whatever you think, leave a comment below. Let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.